Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, good. Because I'm obviously the outlier in this entire program. I was not born in Twin Groves. I was not raised in Twin Groves. And I asked Ms. Thompson what I was supposed to do, since I'm not a native, and I can't tell you, as these people have done previously, about growing up here. And she said, well, just talk about where you grew up. So they sent us a skit program. So I'm going to stick to this because this is what I did. And it said I'm supposed to give you my name, my parents' names, my grandparents' names, were my family slaves, where did my family come from, where did they live, and so forth. So I wrote all this down because I couldn't remember it all. I'm a very old senior citizen right now, and not a young one. But I was born and raised in Menifee, Arkansas, Conway County, and that's where I'm from. My grandparents, actually, my grandmother was the daughter of Green Walker. Her brother was G.S. Walker, Buddy, Uncle Buddy, who lived in North Little Rock. Yeah. So I do have some connection. Yeah. My grandmother was Annie Walker Hines. Her husband was John Hines. They lived in Menifee, and that's where my father was born. My mother's father was Damon Stokes Jr., senior, and they lived in Polk County. And so I grew up between those two places, going to Atkins, where we still have a farm, and then growing up in Menifee, where I still live, because it's home. And I share the same community that the other speakers share. Now what I did, because it said to talk about this, I had to go back, and I got a little confused about figuring out what generation following slavery I actually am. So I got it straight, because we're having a family reunion next month. So Alice is the 4th generation out of slavery. Okay? My mother, who's deceased, was the 3rd generation. She was born in 1914. And then my immediate grandparents on both sides would have been the 2nd generation out of slavery. And so when you ask, when I check my grandparents' birthdays, I have one that was born in 1852, one that was great-grandparents that was born in 1862. So that means that they were born before slavery was abolished. Okay? And so did I have slaves in the family? Obviously we must have. Where did they come from? Well, we do know that. My grandparents on both sides, one group came from Shelbyville, Tennessee, the other group came from Abbeville, North Carolina. And they came into Arkansas, and then I checked on it because I thought, okay, well, why did they come? And I think, as Ms. Moten was giving us the history of Juneteenth, I think all of us have some understanding of it. But when the plantation system broke down, the slaves thought they were really free, and they wanted real freedom. And so as I listened to the speakers before me, I thought about what I knew about my great-grandparents and so forth. And so I made a note here, because there's been, we've got a little book. I didn't bring it because I didn't think I wasn't connected to Twin Groves as officially as I should be. But in that book, there's a discussion of why they came. And it said they wanted to own land. And so you've heard that already. They wanted political participation. And these are the freed people who were leaving Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and Carolinas. And they wanted economic and cultural progress. Mm-hmm. And they weren't getting it. And we all know the story. Ms. Moten was telling us about it as she gave us the introduction. So this is how they ended up in Conway County and in Polk County, in Atkins. They basically, I took some other notes here, and I thought it was very interesting, because we do know, and I was listening to Mr. Tice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Blackwell, we do our children a disservice when they don't understand the problems that our forefathers had with Reconstruction. Everybody holds it up as some great, panacea. Well, these people suffered in Reconstruction because they didn't want them to have any land. They didn't have real freedom. There was killing. This is documented, and I can give you the source if you like. They had cheating. And one of the things I noted, someone said our folks were always resourceful. And so one of the paragraphs I was reading said that when they were making plans, they would always meet after 9 p.m. and they would wrap the mules' feet in croaker sacks so that the white folks trying to follow them could not follow them. Now that's pretty resourceful. It's a lot smarter than some of the folks
Yeah,
that
I
rob
know.
banks and go a block and get caught. There's a problem. We have a problem. We have not. I'm not saying we should teach our children how to rob banks. Yeah, if you're gonna rob one, you ought to get further than a block. If you're gonna make get a problem, that doesn't make any sense. So our folks had common sense. Okay, and I just thought about wrapping the mule's feet in crocus.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty smart.
It is.
I thought, so they can't follow you. And now on TV, you see all the little tire tracks. I said, we're about a dumb bunch. We've got to do better. So what else did I write down here answering these questions? Let me see. I said, oh, I need to tell you something about Menifee, because I think that's what Miss Thompson said I was supposed to do. Well, Menifee was founded in 1872 by a group of people who came, as I said, from Tennessee. And Miss J.W. English has written a history of this, and I wish she was still alive. She'd do a wonderful job, much better than I'm doing up here. But they came in and they brought with them their institutions. And one such institution was Philadelphia Baptist Church, because there had been a Philadelphia Baptist Church in Shelbyville, Tennessee. So they brought it to Menifee, and it is still there. And the pastor came with them, the Reverend Harry Miller, and they established 3 churches. They started working on schools, and you've heard everybody here talk about how our foreparents were interested in educating our children. Well, let's look around in our communities today. I know they didn't ask me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I believe it. Our kids are not in school. And what was that Mr. Tice was just talking about? We have access to education. Why don't we take advantage of it? They sent us to school because I did not enjoy. My grandpa in Atkins was raised in pickle for Atkins Pickle Company. And when my mother was growing up, she used to tell me about how Grandpa took great pride in bringing in the first bale of cotton. She had a picture of him standing there with the cotton. Well, my goodness, my poor grandma had 14 children. And I thought someone said children were an asset. Well, if you think about it, you go back and chase our history to Africa, that's why they had large families, because the families worked. They supported, they provided the income. And so she said, I thought, I'm sure glad I didn't grow up then and pick up American on bales of cotton. But when I was in Atkins visiting grandparents, which I would always go every summer, that was my vacation, I would get to go to Atkins. Well, we had to get out in the field and cut pickle. Well, if you know anything about pickle and okra, you got to get out there before the sun comes up. Because the Atkins Pickle Company only paid you good money if you had the little ones. And if you let them stay on there too long, say, I do know something. They stayed there too long, they got long and hard, and you didn't get any money. There you are with your hands out there, that stuff prickling on your hands is hot, you wipe and sweat. I thought, no, I have to go to school. I cannot deal with this. I thought, let me go back to Memphis because we didn't have a farm. I said, and I didn't learn how to milk the cow very well. And so I learned how to churn. And I could do that. I thought I was really good, churning, making the butter come up. So I thought, I can do this. I'm not cutting pickle. I am not cutting okra. I am not planting sweet potato slips. And you get tired, and then you got to go out there and you dig the stuff up. You got to get the peanuts. My mother had to have peanuts. You got to get the peanuts and shake them and dry them. And then you got to get the dough and put them out there so they can dry. And then you got to wash, fruit jars all summer long. And I thought, this is not the life for Alex. She does not like any of this. And then you got to cut the stuff up and you got to put it on the board so they can dry, so you can have dried peaches and dried apples. And then you got to get out there to the walnut tree. You got the walnuts, you got to crack them, you got to open them up, you got to put them out there. Yeah, thank you. That was hard work. And we need to pass it on. And I know our parents did for us what we've done for our children and grandchildren. We say, oh, we're going to make things better for you. What's the result? They don't know how to do anything. They really don't. And then if you ask them to do something simple, they just look at you like you're crazy. And you're sitting up there with Miss Kennedy, from my friend from Menifee and our fellow researcher. We were talking about it this morning. You ask them to get up at 5:30, and they look at you as if you came down from the moon.
I know.
They didn't know how you got here. Because we don't have chores. People talk about chores. They don't do any chores today. They do them at your house? No. So we worked hard. And I remember that, and I kept thinking, they said, what did you do? And I was thinking about that. I said, on a Saturday, I would catch the bus, the inner city bus, that ran along Highway 64, because that's where we live, and I would catch the bus and stand up all the way to Marlton, so some white people who had empty seats could sit down, okay? And I'd get off the bus, and I would go work all day for 50 cents an hour. So at the end of the day, I would have earned $3. Then I had to come back and sit on a bench outside Warren's Cafe in Marlton, Arkansas to catch the inner city bus back home. Okay, well, by the time I paid bus fare up, bus fare back, how much do you think I actually brought home? Thank you. And then we'd go to Miss Ward's store so we could buy clothing, because you made your own clothes. And she asked how many of you could remember something. I can remember my first store-bought dress. Okay, because you took the flour sacks. Do you remember those? They had the decoration on the bottom. Yeah, and you would use those to make skirts. You use them to make tops. And you thought you were really dressed up.
I know,
now
I know.
You take kids to school, they don't want to wear anything. They don't want to go to Walmart and buy the clothes. They want to go upscale. But you're not working anywhere. You want mama and grandma to take you upscale. Walmart is not good enough. Target's not good enough. Well, what if they'd had to go and work all day like we did?
Oh.
And then come back? Because we always wanted to be self-sufficient.
Amen.
We wanted to be able to own, our own money. That's why I was up there working, so I could have my own money. Because my father was a construction worker. What was he going to do? He was feeding us, and that was what you had to do. So we worked very hard. Lastly, they said I was only supposed to talk 5 to 7 minutes. My last 2 points. I wrote 2 minutes. Menifee. What was good about it? Well, historically, and this comes from Mrs. English's book. This is where I got my sources, and I thought, as somebody who always thought you're supposed to tell folk where you got stuff so they won't think you're lying. This came from a book called Steps Through Time that was produced by Ira Brewer Benton, and she was a graduate of the school in Menifee. I got material, some of this Menifee history according to Alma Bird, and then Mrs. English's book, Menifee Past and Present, the Bicentennial of 1976. So this is where I got that. So we do have definitive dates for when the town was formed, where it was formed, along Jameson Stop in Menifee. It was a town which was important to the people who came in because it was controlled totally by black people. And that was important. And that's why places like Twin Groves, you see, are important to us today. And I was telling Dr. Jager back there, who's a colleague of mine, former colleague, I said, I hadn't been to Twin Groves since 2017. But I used to bring kids out here because I thought it was important to see a progressive black town. And Twin Groves is a progressive black town.
Thanks to the
And Menifee was progressive. We're somewhere. I don't know where we are right now. But we're not as progressive as we need to be. But they wanted to have their own everything. And in Menifee they did, because it was a predominantly black town. Dominated by black people. We didn't have anybody telling you when you could get up, where you could plant something, where you could build a house, and we didn't have anybody riding through shooting you at night. And notice that what is coming back, one of the questions here says, what is one change you have experienced as an adult that I still think about? Well, listen, I live on Highway 64, and every day after Buffalo, after Uvalde, what do you think I think about?
Shooting.
You don't have to be a genius to know that mostly black folk are living on Highway 64 in Menifee. And I live right off, you just turn right off the highway into my driveway. I said, okay, you get some liquored up person coming out of Faulkner County, because you can buy liquor all over Faulkner County, and especially in Conway. And I said, all they have to do is say, oh, this is a black town, bam, 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 bam. It's not a good thought. And it does cause me quite a bit of restlessness. I didn't grow up that way. I grew up on Highway 64. I could walk from my house straight to the highway, catch the bus, go wherever we were going. Okay, now, in Menifee, and most of you know how it's laid out. Most of it's right there on the highway. You've got 5 churches right there on the highway. Think about it. It doesn't take a lot. And I know you're probably saying, why did she bring that up? Well, I didn't come up here to tell you something pleasant. I did come to say the truth and to say my truth. And my truth is, because I said this to our pastor, because he always wanted to leave the door unlocked and leave it open. I said, I'm not sitting up in here with the door unlocked. I said, lock it back up. And anybody that comes, they can holler. I mean, it's a small church. We're still country people. They can holler and say, I'm out here. Let me in. I'm not sitting up there with these folks going in churches, scoping them out to see what they're going to do. Now, that is something we didn't grow up with. We've heard the pleasant sides of it. And lastly, I promise I'm going to shut up because I never obey the timeline the folks give me. Ms. Kennedy is here with me. She grew up in Menifee too, so she can tell whether I'm telling the truth or not, and I am. But we have documented our history. I'm sorry, this is the best I could do. We have a mural in Menifee. It's a very attractive mural. And we tell our story about the founding of Menifee on our mural. And it's in our multi-purpose room. And then we have, I brought some copies with me, we have an explanation, because even some of the people in Menifee will come up and look at the mural, and we have one with a man grinding sorghum, and somebody was looking to me, who is that? What is he doing? So we wrote up what our images represent. They never witnessed somebody out in the park grinding sorghum.
I don't know what he would.
Well, what do you think the folks were doing? They made their own food. They took care of it. And so we have that. We talk about the 3 schools. And you know we have the most historic gymnasium in the state of Arkansas. It is one of 3, only 3 in the entire state. So when people tell me, oh, aren't you happy about what Arkansas did for you? I said, no. They built 3 gyms for black people. And one of them is still standing, and it is standing proudly in Menifee, Arkansas, and it is on the Register of Historic Places. And we have worked very hard to keep it there. But it is there. And we have our park. We talk about, you've heard everybody, all of us share in common going to church. I mean, you, like they said, you didn't have a choice. You got up on Sunday morning and you knew where you were going. And in our case, we had to walk. Because my mother could not drive and my father worked away from home. So we walked all up the highway on the way to church. And you stayed all day. And then you ate in the back. And then you got to walk back home. And you'd be so tired. And you knew not to complain because it wasn't going to do you any good at all. But, you know, the beauty of it is, unlike our young people, when we hit hard times, we got a song we can sing. We've got a verse we can remember because they made us memorize Scripture. And you know, I still can memorize the 24 songs. You had to stand up. Think about what we haven't done. When we were growing up, you didn't slump up in church. You stood up straight. You recited. You weren't up there mumbling on a piece of paper that you couldn't read. You memorized it. You stood up. You recited. And you were respectful of older people.
Amen.
And we still are. But our children, I was in a place, was that yesterday? Yeah, I dropped off some stuff. I stood there 15 minutes. This child never said a word. So finally I said, good morning. And he looked at me, hi. I said, how are you? Oh, I'm all right. How are you? I said, better now that you're talking. We're missing something. So I promise, Ms. Moten, Ms. Thompson, I hope that's what you wanted me to do.
Good job.